At this time, I would like to introduce our speaker for today, Alysia Cook. Alysia is Principal of Opportunity Strategies, LLC, an Austin, Texas-based customized training, professional facilitation, and strategic planning firm for community development. She most recently spoke to Georgetown businesses about how to grow your business on Monday, actually. And previously, Secret Shop businesses in downtown Georgetown conducted small business workshops and presented at the Main Street Breakfast Bites program. So Alysia is well-versed in all things Georgetown. I'm really excited to learn from Alysia today about polishing up our presentation skills. So I'm going to turn it over to her now.
Great. Thanks, Kim. Appreciate that. How's everyone doing this morning? I hope well. As Kim said, I'm going to be asking you a few questions today, and so get familiar with the raise hand function or some of the other, there's some other reactions. You should see some reaction pieces there too. So some of it's under the chat or participant, and some of it's under the more, I think. So, okay, well, have y'all heard that the fear of speaking ranks right up there with the fear of death for some people? Do you believe that that's true, at least for some people? But why is that? Why is it that some people are so terrified of speaking? Well, my goal today is to help you eliminate some of the fears and to help build your confidence around presenting. And we'll talk about the different types of presenting. So let's go ahead and test this out. Raise your hand on the screen. Raise your hand if any of you have had stage fright before. If you have been nervous about getting on stage, whether it's nervous the night before. See, I see some video, raise your hands. Try the function on here too, because I want you to get familiar with using Zoom. So see if you can use the, there you go, Margie did it. Y'all see that thumbs up that Margie did? Okay, so try that, find that function. It's under participants or chat, depending on, I think it's a little different for the presenter. Anyway, so get familiar with using some of those things. How many of you have, so we've all been nervous before doing presentations, but how many of you have had that sensation of, oh my goodness, I totally nailed it. That was exactly what I wanted to say. And I could read the audience and that was what they wanted to hear. And they got what I wanted to say. So has that happened to you before? Okay. I do not see y'all using the hand function on there, but that's okay. Just try that sometime. Okay, so what I just did with you is, in the part about what causes these reactions, each of these three things we're going to cover in depth today. And what I just did with you just now is what I call a grand opening. It's actually, and we'll talk about processes in a little bit, but a grand opening is getting people interested and curious about things by asking questions, which is different from, hi, my name is Alysia Cook. My company's Opportunity Strategies. Today I'm here to talk to you about presentation skills. So none of us like those kinds of openings. So this is an opening that kind of gets people participating and gets people thinking about what we're going to say. So remember that grand opening because you're going to need that later. Okay, so what is it that we're going to cover today? Well, these are the bullet points that we're going to talk about. And we're going to talk about how to effectively discuss what it is that your business does. And I know you come from all different types of businesses and, you know, performance services, products, all that type of stuff. We are going to, okay. I'm sorry, y'all. All right, Kim's going to be monitoring the chat box. So Kim, just break in if there's something in the chat box that we need to pause and talk about. Okay, so what we're going to cover today is what your business does, how to create an effective elevator speech or elevator pitch, how to prepare your message, delivering your message, how to overcome nervousness and anxiety, We'll talk about that. Storytelling in your presentations, and how to craft a call to action, and how to, I'm going to give you some tips for presenting from home online, since many of us are going to be, you've probably been doing that the last several weeks. You've either been presenting or participating in presentations on Zoom, or Skype, or GoToWebinar, GoToMeetings, whatever. So we're going to cover all of those pieces, and then we'll recap this at the end here. Okay. So let's talk about that first encounter when maybe you're at an event, maybe you're at a business after hours, maybe you are at a conference or networking event, and you're shaking hands. Well, I guess you're not shaking hands right now, but introducing yourself to someone, and you say, "So what is it that you do?" Well, when you're in that situation, here's some tips for you. Try to get the other person to tell you what they do first. Why is that important? Well, it's important because it helps you frame up what you're going to say next. So for example, in my business, I do training. I train elected officials. I train economic development boards. I train economic development professionals. I could list 15 things that I do training. Second thing is professional facilitation. I facilitate town hall meetings and public hearings and all kinds of retreats and board retreats and leadership retreats. And then I do strategic planning for all those different type organizations. Well, that's too much to say in an introduction. And so if I can get the other person to start talking to me first, and they say, "Oh, hey, I run a nonprofit," then all of a sudden my answer is different. Well, I do board training and strategic planning for nonprofits. So I can craft what I do. I can craft my answer that better tailors to their understanding, whether or not they could be a potential client. I can craft that better rather than me going through the whole litany of all the services and clients and all that I have. So try to ask the other person's name first. Asking questions, keep asking them questions about what they do and how they do it, and how did you get started? The more you can learn about them, the better your answer is going to be. And so saying what you do in an elevator speech format. So we're going to get into that next. I'll give you some tips on how to craft a good elevator speech. But once you learn what they want to say, then you say your own elevator speech, and ask something of them that might be related to your business. "Oh, well, I teach, I do strategic planning. How do you do goal development in your business? How do you develop your 2020 goals?" So you start a dialogue that's kind of in the middle for both of us. Asking to exchange information. "Do you have a business card? I'll give you my card. I'll give you my card. You give me yours." And then the last two are things that I see people miss all the time. Next, go ahead and connect with that person on LinkedIn within the next 24 hours. And hopefully I don't have to tell you how powerful LinkedIn is. If you're in this room today listening to this and you do not have a LinkedIn profile, my hope for you is that you will do that before sundown today. The reason is that LinkedIn is not a place to find a job necessarily. Some people do find jobs there, but what it is, it's a networking tool, and it's kind of a legitimizer too. If you're, in the business world, you need to be on LinkedIn. So make sure that you have a profile, that you keep it up to date, and that you communicate with folks on there. And the last one is, depending on the situation, you don't have to write a handwritten note every time you meet somebody, but it really is a nice gesture. It really sticks in my mind when I'm presenting or talking to someone or meeting someone, and they write a little handwritten note the next week that says, "Great to meet you. I enjoyed whatever. Hope we can keep in touch." It's just a little added, what we say in Louisiana, lagniappe, just a little something extra that goes above and beyond. So I hope you'll consider that. Okay, so that's some good tips for introducing yourself. Now, how do we put together an elevator speech or elevator pitch? Well, I hate to use the word pitch, because pitch is like you're pitching your product or you're pitching an investment or something. But a lot of times we just use an elevator speech when we're just looking to share what it is we do in a clear, concise manner. So making sure that your elevator speech, so it's a short description. Here's your definition up here. It's a short description of your company or your product or service that explains that concept in a way that others understand it in about the time it takes to ride up a few floors of an elevator. So short and sweet. A good elevator speech is about 15 to 30 seconds. So a minute is probably too long. So get your pitch down to 30 seconds if you can. So what does it need to be? It needs to be compelling. It needs to make me, you need to make me curious about what you do, how long you've been doing it. What could it mean to me? Do I know anyone who could use your services? Do I know anyone that I could refer you to? So it has to be crafted so that you're arousing curiosity in me. You don't want to answer all the questions about what you do in the elevator speech. So it should also share a little bit about you. Your elevator speech should talk about your skill set. You can say 27 years in the business, or certified in this, or expertise in this area. So making sure that you share a little bit about what your skills are so that people can try to figure out how that fits into what they may need or someone else that they know may need. Making sure that you speak clearly and articulately when you are talking about your elevator speech, that you're not too low toned or too high pitched. And we'll give some tips on that today too. But when you're talking to somebody, you got to speak with enthusiasm. I mean, this is your baby, right? This is your business. This is your job. And so talk about it with that excitement and enthusiasm, and you can hear a smile when somebody's talking. So try to use your smile when you're talking about your elevator pitch. And the thing about these is you got to practice. The better you can get this down pat, it can just roll off the tongue when you practice it. All right. So those were some things that you should do in your elevator speech. Now, these are some things that you should pay attention to make sure that you avoid when you're crafting an elevator speech for the answer to what is it that you do. Try not to sound too arrogant or braggadocious. So I'm the greatest facilitator of all time. I'm the greatest strategic planner you've ever seen. You want to avoid that kind of stuff, of course. So you want to be humble, but you also want to be compelling in your expertise. So that can be a delicate balance. We've all met those people that the minute we meet them, we turn around and roll our eyes. Oh gosh, boy, he's full of himself. Or she really thinks a lot of herself. So you've experienced that braggadociousness before. And making sure that you don't sound too boring. You know, we've met those people at networking events too, when you're looking over their shoulder like, oh, how can I get out of here and go somewhere else? Don't sound too memorized. Don't sound too programmed. You know, practice your pitch, but making sure that it doesn't sound too rehearsed, that it's not like you're reading off of a paper. So get it to where it can be a little bit flexible. Doesn't have to be exactly word for word every time. Make sure that you're not talking too quickly. We've all seen those people on stage or just in a networking setting where they're just talking so quickly that it's hard to keep up. Don't take more than 60 seconds. We already said that earlier. That's something that a lot of people mess up because we love to talk about our business. We love to talk about ourselves, and it can get a little bit too winded sometimes. So just kind of catch yourself and try not to use jargon. Jargon is, your business speak. So when I'm talking to folks, I don't say ED, because in the economic development world, that means economic development. Well, that can also mean lots of other things. So don't use acronyms, don't use jargon, don't use unfamiliar terms that people may be unfamiliar with. So, and please do not share anything that you hate about your job. I love this, but I really hate this about what I do. This is not the time to talk about any element of your job or your business that you don't like. So save that for deeper discussions and deeper relationships. All right. And if you have any questions about anything, you can type them in the chat box and we will get to them. All right. So what does your elevator speech look like? So here's some examples of, here's an example of a template that I put together for you to use. And you can say here, what is it that you do? And you can be I or we. I help or we help. Who's your customer? Who's your ideal customer? That persona, that's your major customer. Put that in there. Who do we help? You know, the action verb is what do we do for them? What is the outcome that we provide? And then by doing what? By providing what? By selling what? By implementing what? So that's kind of a good framework to start with. It doesn't have to always be exactly like that, but that's a good start. So I'm going to give you my elevator speech for my business. So this is in the situation where I don't know what you do. I'm meeting you for the first time. I don't know, you know, how to craft my elevator speech to make it customized to you. So this is just kind of off the cuff. I say, well, what is it that you do over there, Alysia, at Opportunity Strategies? Well, I help downtowns, chambers of commerce, and economic development organizations provide superior services to their businesses by delivering workshops, professional facilitation, and strategic planning services. So that's just kind of short and sweet, but it's enough that the other person can say, oh, well, that's interesting. How'd you get started in that? Or how long you've been doing that? Or who are your customers? Or it just opens the door to new questions. And that's exactly what you want in an elevator speech, is opening the door to further exploration of what you do in your business. Okay, so here's some other examples, okay? And you can see that these are crafted a little bit different. So there's no hard and fast rules, except for the ones I gave you earlier, that they should be brief and compelling. So here's a couple other examples. Maybe you go into assisted living facilities and you help people with exercise. So this is really defined. I help elderly women in assisted living facilities stay fit and healthy by teaching them exercises in group classes. Do you see how concise that is? It's very articulated, you know, picture of what this person does. There's no ambiguity about what they do for a living. And you can picture it. You can actually picture the elderly ladies in the assisted living facility doing group exercises. So that's what you want. You want to paint a picture in the other person's mind. I help homeowners select the perfect roof for their home, their style, and their budget. So that would be a roofing company. And this is for a realtor who specializes in first-time home ownership. So we help renters buy their very first home by providing personalized care that navigates them to just the right options while eliminating the intimidating and confusing parts. So can you see how that's more compelling and an invitation to conversation more than just, I'm a realtor? And it's like, okay, great, now what? So put some oomph into your elevator speech. And so you can see those aren't exactly crafted the same. Some have a little bit more depth, but those are some good examples of elevator speeches that you can kind of copy to make your own. Okay, so let's talk about that magic thing. What is that thing? You know this thing, right? It's that charisma. Certain people have this, and we all know it when we see it because it's not real common. It's that person that has real charisma, someone who really gives great attention. It's that person that always makes you feel special, makes you feel like you're the only person in the room, and they're captivating. So what is it about certain people that make them captivating and charismatic? Well, I think it's a lot of things. And I think it's some things that can be learned. I think some people are kind of just born with this. They're born with this suave, savvy, everybody likes you kind of thing. But I think it's something that you can learn too. So some tips about being a little bit more charismatic. One, be a good active listener. So studies show that when people meet someone else, that they like you more, the like factor actually goes up the more that you listen to them. So why is that? Because we all love to talk about ourselves. We all love to talk. So when you give someone else the chance to talk and then you ask probing questions and then you're kind of parroting back to them, the more they talk, the more they like you. And so use that to your benefit, the active listening. Of course, the eye contact. We all know how powerful that is when you can look someone in the eye and you can say, you know, have a conversation with them. But when someone's looking over your shoulder, you've experienced this, I know. You're somewhere and you're trying to have a dialogue and they're looking over your shoulder to see if somebody more important or better or whatever's coming in the door. But it's the people who focus straight on you and make you feel like you're the most important thing in the room. You can get a lot of mileage with that. So fixed eye contact, fixed attention, of course, smiling. The more you can smile in this kind of first, you know, interaction with folks, the more that they're going to like you. Asking questions, and the last one, the last tip here for being charismatic is say their name. Our name is the most magical thing, and you may not think you love to hear your name, but your brain is programmed to love to hear your name. And so the more you can say someone else's name, the like factor goes up and up and up. So those are some tools for you to be a little bit more charismatic. We could all use a little bit of that in our, but this is something you got to practice too. So making people feel really important is a great, important part of speaking. Okay, so now we're going to get into a little bit more about presentations themselves. So I want you to think about planning presentations, building presentations, and delivering presentations. So we're going to talk about each of these three elements today. And when I talk about presentations, it can be any type of presentation. This could be you standing up at Rotary. This could be you giving a 5-minute pitch at a chamber meeting. Or this could be, you know, a full day, you know, 8-hour presentation workshop or something that you're doing. So 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 3 hours, whatever, all this is going to be relatable to any of those. Okay. So even if you're speaking for 2 minutes, you still have to plan, build, and deliver. Okay. So how do we do an effective presentation planning? Whether it's a small, large, you know, short or lengthy presentation, there's 4 things that you've got to ask yourself before you start thinking about what it is you're going to say. What is it I'm trying to accomplish? What is the thing that I'm trying to convey to the audience about today? So here's mine for today. So I put together my presentation for today for you. And so the questions I asked myself after Kim asked me to present this, the questions I asked myself, number 1, what am I trying to accomplish? Well, I'm trying to teach this audience some tips to better present your business and yourself to potential customers. Number 2, who really needs to be hearing what I have to say? Same thing goes with these little 5-minute presentations. Who really needs to hear this? Well, for today's purposes, I wanted business owners and business managers to hear this message. Number 3, what must I achieve with today's presentation? Well, I put on paper, I must teach useful and immediately implementable tips. I know that everybody in this room is busy and that you want stuff that you can take away and use today, tomorrow, this week, next week, immediately implementable things. And number 4, what is my call to action for you today? And my call to action is to try out some of these tips before the end of the week. So put together these 4 questions in any presentation that you put together. And if you have any questions about any of these questions, you can put them in the chat box. Okay, so what else do you need to pay attention to in effective presentation planning? Well, there's a few essential considerations that you need to think about. And there's some listening preferences, room setup, and mic, podium, and screen. So we'll talk about what this is. essential considerations are start time and end time. So today's presentation is going to be around 45, 50 minutes, and then we've got 10 to 15 minutes for Q&A at the end. So I have to make sure that my information is packaged within that, that time frame consideration, and that I leave time for Q&A. So I have to think about that when I'm planning the presentation. What are the listening preferences? Do people just want to listen? Do they want to participate? Should it be interactive? How participatory should it be? We'll talk some more about that. In a room setup, there's a couple different setup styles that you need to know about. If you can dictate the room setup, if you're presenting a workshop, let's say, you need to pay attention to how the room is set up. So I'll tell you my 3 favorite room setup styles. My favorite is horseshoe shape, and that's where the room is set up in a horseshoe, and I can walk in the middle, and I can approach people, and I can pull away from people, and I can engage as the facilitator or as the speaker walking around. The other 2 styles are classroom and rounds or crescent rounds. So the benefit of using a classroom style where all the tables are lined up and I'm presenting at the front, the benefit of that is that I'm projecting that I do not want you to participate. You know, maybe you raise your hand or whatever, but I'm lecturing to you if you're in classroom style. So that's why you see so many conferences set up that way. Round table is when I want the people at the table to talk to one another, when I want them to do small group work, case studies. And so I speak and then I turn it over to them, and then I speak and I turn it over to them. That's the benefit of rounds or crescent rounds. But once again, I like the horseshoe shape the best because they're when people are facing each other, they can talk more, but I can still control what happens in the room as the facilitator. So keeping in mind your room setup styles, if you're leading the meeting, sometimes you're just asked to speak and you don't get to choose your room setup style, but I wanted to share that with you. And then pay attention to the mic. Do I need a microphone on a stand? Do I need a handheld microphone? Do I need a lavalier that attaches to my shirt? Do I need an earpiece lavalier that wraps around my ear, then comes onto my cheek? So, paying attention to that, paying attention to, do you need a podium? For some people, a podium is a good safety tool where you can put your notes on your podium and you can kind of see your notes, and it can give you some comfort. I'm a walker. I like to have memorized my notes, and I like to walk across the stage, walk down into the audience. So pick something that makes you feel comfortable, and then pay attention to your screen, of course. So also pay attention to break times. If you're leading a long time meeting, here's a good tip for you. If you're leading an all day workshop or training for your customers, people need a bathroom break every 90 minutes. So if you start a meeting at 8, you need a bathroom break at 9:30 and every 90 minutes after that. So take note of that. Okay. Now, one last thing on planning here. A lot of us are doing online presentations right now, so I want you to pay attention to some specific things with online presentations. Your webcam quality is really important. It needs to be clear. It needs to be where people can see you, where it's, it's a good quality webcam. That may be built into your laptop. It may be that you got to spend a little extra money and buy a clip-on. Your microphone quality. Make sure you get online with someone and they can test how's the sound. So before we started today, Kim and I were on here before, when y'all were in the waiting room. I was in here asking Kim, can you see me? Can you hear me? Is the sound okay? So we were testing things out right before she let you into the room. So pay attention to your background view. So I see Anne has a lovely virtual background right there. If y'all can see Anne's screen, that's colorful. It's interesting. She says, I'm working remotely to help your business thrive. So she's with Community Impact Newspaper, it looks like, right? I recognize your logo. So Anne's doing a lot of things right today by showing us not only her beautiful face, but she's showing us an interesting background, and she's projecting her company's logo. So those are some important things to pay attention to with your background. So let's see, anybody else got a background? I don't see any other ones. Okay. I did see a couple earlier. I think, didn't Jim, I see your face now, but I think you had a colorful background earlier. Oh, there you are. Okay. Look at Jim's virtual background. So those are all just kind of some interesting views to take there. And background views can be provided by your by the Zoom provider, or you can customize your own photograph. You can put a picture of your own business or your own downtown behind there too. So pay attention to the angle of the camera. So if you can see, my camera is pretty much straight onto my face. I don't have a lot of stuff in the background. I've got, you know, a lamp over here that I actually need for lighting. It's not just for staging. And then I have a painting in the background, but I don't really have a whole lot much else busy stuff. So I'm sure you've seen on a lot of TV interviews the last few weeks where people sometimes just have a bunch of background stuff. And if I'm trying to zoom in to see, well, what kind of books are they reading and what kind of stuff are they, what is that piece of artwork on her shelf? You don't want it to be too distracting. So pay attention to the camera angle. Mine's kind of straight on right now. But you don't want to, you know, you don't want to have this look where it's just really too close to the screen. You've seen these people and it's like, back up. I can smell your breath through the webcam. And you don't want to have, you know, too much of this. So I'll try to see if I can remove my webcam. I've got a clip-on webcam, so I'll try to remove it right here for a second and give you some. Y'all seen these webcams, right? Right here. Hello. Well, you know, this is not real attractive because you're seeing the whole double chin thing down here. And it's just not as warm and welcoming when you're making people look up to your, you know, up your nose. So if I can see your nostrils, up your nostrils, it's a little bit too much. So just make sure you have the angle right. Make sure that you practice the screen sharing. Learn the software capabilities of whatever tool you're using. I really have gotten into Zoom the last several weeks, but Skype is a good one. GoToWebinar, Cisco WebEx is another one. So just whichever software you like, make sure you get familiar with all the functionalities of that and practice, and pay attention to your background noises. So I was on a Zoom call the other day where, bless her heart, this girl's dog was just barking, and it was like nothing she could do about it. She should have put the dog somewhere else or gave it a treat or something, but it was too distracting. So pay attention to your background noise. This morning, Kim and I were just kind of doing some tests. Well, her garbage truck people came by this morning, and she was worried about, you know, can you hear the garbage trucks? I did a Zoom call several weeks ago, and my next door neighbor had the landscapers, the yard mowers were out that day, and it was so loud in my house from the mowers next door. Not much I can do about that, but just paying attention to that. So try to get rid of background noises and distractions. Okay. Next one. Okay. So now we talked about planning. Now we're talking about building the presentation. So pay attention to some of these things. You want to pay attention to, I didn't use a lot of images in this presentation because I was teaching you some tips, but images really can speak a lot better in a lot of presentations. So use photographs, pay attention to fonts, pay attention to font sizes. Why do we want to avoid that Comic Sans font? Because it looks like a joke. It looks like a kid's handwriting. Comic Sans has no business in the professional world. Has no business in your email, has no business in your correspondence, your presentations, anyway. If you're over 10 years old, you don't need to be using Comic Sans. So take that font out of your life if you use that. Pay attention to flows. My flows today are just easy click screens. I don't have a bunch of fly-ins and fly-outs and fades and stars, and those can be interesting and fun sometimes, but they can get overloaded sometimes too. So pay attention to that. Use content, use numbers in your content. I'm going to show you 3 ways to do this, 7 tips for this. People can remember certain numbers and you can kind of click them off like we did. Presentation planning, building, and next we're going to talk about delivery. So pay attention to colors. If you see today, my screen is kind of easy, greenish blue. It's not real wild and flashy. We don't have time to talk about it today, but pay attention to colors because blue evokes certain things, red evokes certain things. I don't ever use red in a presentation unless I'm checking things off, like we completed this element of the strategic plan. Blue is trustworthy. Yellows and browns are too hard to see on screen sometimes. So just pay attention to the colors. And what is the feel of your presentation? So is the feel of it, is it whimsical or is it bureaucratic? I'm a government agency and I'm trying to not be so bureaucratic and try to be a little bit more personable. Is my presentation going to be fun or is it going to be serious? So think about what the feel of it is. And again, practice, practice, practice. How do you create interaction in groups? Well, you got to ask the right questions. You got to ask people questions and have participation. Brainstorming of ideas. So brainstorming is not consensus. It's just where we're just throwing stuff up on the wall. We're just asking for ideas. These are good things when you're presenting to go around the room and say, well, what do you think about that? Well, what do you think about that? And then random is just asking folks who in the room can share a story of the time that they got physically sick, preparing for their presentation. And then whoever speaks up, so no one's on the spot. Create physical interaction. So this could be small groups. This could be walking to the board. This could be standing up if you believe this or sitting down if you don't. And then, of course, you want to reward good behavior by saying, congratulations on stuff. So just like I pointed out, oh, Anne and Jim have great backgrounds. I wanted to give them praise because they've got something cool. That's an example of something I'm sharing today. So look for that in your audience, someone you can praise or reward for something. Okay, so effective delivery presentation. So pay attention to these things. How do you overcome fear and anxiety? Well, I've got a couple tips for you. One, and I have done all of these, and I've been a speaker for 27 years, and I'm going to tell you some of my favorite tips. One is go to the bathroom before every presentation, not just because you want to avoid having to go to the restroom while you're speaking, but going to the restroom is a private moment. It just kind of allows you to gather yourself right before you go on stage. You can do the power pose. Y'all seen that before, right? You can't see my full body, but the Wonder Woman standing with your hands on your hips and your legs spread out like I'm king of the world. You can do that. And that kind of gets you, the power pose can get some anxiety out of you. Another one that I've done to overcome anxiety is tell yourself, I do hard things all the time. That is a powerful phrase. You in your business, you do hard things all the time. So if you're nervous about getting on stage, just tell yourself, man, I do hard things all the time. And another thing that I tell myself sometimes is, I don't do this much anymore, but I used to when I would get nervous. I would say, my audience came here to learn and I came here to teach. Now go do it. They came for something and I came for something, and this is what I'm doing. I'm teaching today. Get out there and do it. So, what else? Oh, and gratitude. You may not think of gratitude as a great way to overcome fear and anxiety, but it really is. Someone told me this years ago, and I love this phrase. And you can just say this in your head or say it out loud. Thank you, God, or whatever your religious beliefs are. God or universe. Thank you, God or universe, for making this presentation that I'm about to give, making it fun, easy, and impactful. That's a great phrase. Thank you, God or universe, for making my presentation fun, easy, and impactful. And just kind of practicing gratitude, that can kind of take away some of your anxiety. So use the grand opening that we talked about in the beginning, preview. So you saw my first slide where I said, today we're going to talk about these things, and these are the things we're talking about. And then you'll see in a minute, we'll do a wrap up. Look at your audience, look at them while you're speaking to them. Storytelling, and storytelling is a great, I've told you several stories already through this presentation, and it's a compelling way to share an idea. If you don't have a lot of experience with storytelling, I have a book that I'm going to recommend to you, and it's called Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. Donald Miller, Building a Story Brand, and he will teach you how to be a great storyteller. And it's great for presentations, for blogs, for all kinds of stuff. You need to pay attention to your audience. Who is my audience? I asked Kim today, who's in the audience, and she gave me some tips on who was going to be here today. You don't want to get too much, on stage. You can ambulate and you can gesture more. But if I sit here and I'm doing all this all through my whole webinar today, it's just a little bit too much. So limit your gesturing when you're online, but you want to be a little bit more emphatic when you're in person. Pay attention to your tone of voice, your volume, and your pace. So are you talking too quickly? Not enough? Delivering your call to action. Make sure that at the end of your presentation, you ask, what is it that you want the audience to do? What is it you want them to do because of participating in your presentation? And like I said, this can be a 5-minute presentation, but at the end of it, I want you to call me for a quote, or call me for advice, or connect with me on LinkedIn, or whatever. Every presentation should have a call to action. Review what you just did, close out, and then ask for evaluations, ask for feedback. If it's that kind of presentation, you wouldn't do that at a chamber 5-minute thing. But if you need an evaluation, ask for it. So kind of wrapping up here, my call to action to you, and I implore you to, encourage you to do a call to action at the end of your presentation. But my call to action to you today is, number one, I want you to work on an elevator speech. Put together a good 30-second, what is it that you do over there at your company? Second, within 10 days, so studies show that if you don't take something away from a presentation and do something with it in 10 days, you will lose it. So 10 days from today, you will have forgotten about me, you've forgotten about this webinar, you will have gone on to conquer other things. So you pick something in this presentation that you found valuable and use it within 10 days. Number 3, I want you to contact me for free help if you have any questions. I'm here because Kim is my customer, you're Kim's customer, and if you have any questions about anything, I'm here to help you with any advice. Especially, I know a lot of businesses are struggling right now with the COVID-19, and if there's anything I can do to help you, I want you to reach out, because I'm here to help you, no charge. And number 4, I invite you to connect with me on Twitter or LinkedIn. And I would love to learn more about your business. So connect with me. You can find me on LinkedIn. So those are my 4 calls to action. And that's how you would do it, wrapping up a presentation. And here's the recap. So here's the things we just talked about today. We talked about how to effectively discuss what your business does. We talked about how to craft your own elevator speech with some examples. I talked to you about preparing your message, which involves planning and building. And then I talked to you about delivering your message with clarity and confidence. And the way you get confidence is practice. And we talked about how to overcome nervousness and anxiety. And we talked about storytelling. There's a lot more. We could do a whole workshop on storytelling, but go grab that book. If you don't have Building a Story Brand, you'll find it fascinating. And we don't have a number on here, but near the end here, craft your own call to action, even if it's just a elevator pitch, but even if it's just if you have just 2 or 3 minutes at an event, craft a call to action. And then we gave you some tips for presenting online from home, because a lot of us are doing that. So that's the recap. And here's all of my contact information. And you can reach me at that email address. And if you want any copies of today's slides, you can go download them at my website, opportunitystrategies.com/gtown. So that's where the slides are. So Kim, you want to open it up? I see a lot of comments in the chat box. You want to open it up for conversation?
Sure, yes. So I just put that link in the chat with the opportunitystrategies.com/gtown.
Okay.
So you can refer to that. And yes, and the presentation is available there. We will also have this recording available next week. So keep that in mind if you want to refer back to it, if maybe you have a coworker or a customer or someone that could benefit from this presentation, you can share that with them as well. Alysia, we did have a question that came through during the presentation.
Okay.
Let's see. Let me find it. There was some good chatter going on, so.
Yeah, I'm going through the beginning of the chat. Did everybody find the raise hand function? I see a lot of comments that you couldn't find it. Everybody found it? Okay. So it's on that participant thing. If you didn't, you scroll, you open the participant thing where it says chat and you can raise your hand there.
So could you go back to the colors to use in a presentation? There were some more questions about that. And I don't know who it was that asked that because it just says iPad on there. But if they want to participate, they can raise their hand and I'll unmute them so that they can ask more details.
Okay. Yeah, I'll speak about that. And then if you're the person who asked that, raise your hand and you can ask over your microphone too. More about colors. Okay, so the certain colors evoke certain emotions. So I like to use blues and greens. And the reason why blue a lot of times is associated with professionalism and with trust. So you'll see a lot of banks use blue. You'll see a lot of power companies use blue. IBM is blue. Lowe's hardware, Lowe's home centers is blue. And so it evokes an element of trustworthiness and professionalism. Green can evoke emotions of growth, Mother Earth, of freshness, springtime, new growth. It's just a kind of a freshness kind of color. So the color I use today is kind of a mix between blue and green. Yellow can be really hard for people to see, so I almost never use yellow fonts or yellow backgrounds. If you want to put a photo up and it has yellow in it, that's fine, but I wouldn't use yellow. I never use yellow magic markers when I'm facilitating in person. It's just too hard for a lot of people to see. Brown is so boring. If you have a brown background on the screen, use some other color, mix some blues and oranges with it. Orange is a really powerful color. You can see here I used it kind of as an accent color on some of the bullet points and up in the upper right hand corner. It's a freshness. It's a orange kind of evokes creativity and freshness. So don't be afraid to use orange. When you use it, it can be real powerful with people. So mixing it with other things. And like I said, red can be harsh sometimes. So be careful with how much red you use. If red's in your logo, by all means, use it, but use it sparingly because it can be a little bit, I like to use red to show completion or achievement with something. And you can reach out if you want some more on that. You can always reach out to me and I can give you a dissertation on colors. All right.
Great. Does anyone else have a question or a comment? I'm happy to unmute or answer questions in the chat box.
You can unmute yourself too.
Yes, I think it's right next to the same button that you can raise your hand. There's a function to unmute.
Who has a question? Comment, criticism, any of that, feedback?
Looks like you're getting a lot of good feedback.
Okay.
Anne likes your background and the presentation.
Oh, thanks. That's
Lots of good info.
my painting is actually a original art by a guy that I went to high school with, if you can believe that. Okay, glad purple didn't show up. The dissertation on, on colors. Yeah, purple. Purple evokes royalty and sophistication, and so purple can be real powerful. I just be careful with it because it can also evoke too much whimsy or not taking things seriously. But if you want to talk about something being regal or royalty, purple can be a powerful color. I just wouldn't use it all the time. But I am an LSU grad, so I do use a purple sometimes. Okay, where did I go to high school? Oh, I grew up in Audrey. I grew up in Shreveport, Louisiana. So I went to high school in Louisiana. Go Tigers! All right, Anne. Anne's a Tiger fan. Okay, well, if no one else has any questions, if you do, type them in the box. If not, like I said, I'm here for you. Feel free to reach out to me. My email is there. That phone number is my cell phone number. You can send me a text. You can connect with me on LinkedIn or Twitter. But I'm here for you. So if you have, go Noles. Guess what, Michaela? I'm also a Seminole. I started my college career at Florida State, so I'm a Nole and a Tiger. Woohoo! I knew you knew that. So anyway, y'all feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to help you with any advice or brainstorming. I have told many of my clients the last several weeks to call me if you want to cry. Some of them have taken advantage of that. If you need to cry or vent or scream or brainstorm, I'm here for you, okay? So don't be shy about reaching out. Would like to hear more about how to read your audience facial and body language in response to your presentation, okay? This is really hard to do on a Zoom call, of course. I can see some of your faces, but not everyone's faces. Yes, it's particularly hard in the webinar world. But I think this is something that, I don't know your name. Who's the iPad person? Tell me your name on there so that I can use your name. You can, Conchita? Okay, great. So thank you for sharing that. It's reading an audience's language, reading an audience's body language and facial expressions is something that just comes with time, I think. But you can tell, like I said, I've been doing this for 27 years. I can look at an audience and see that they need to go to the bathroom, or that they're hungry, or that they're bored, or that it's over their head, or it's too remedial. I could just tell by the looks on people's faces. So paying attention, paying attention to what it is, how people are responding. Are they looking at you with anticipation? You know, is someone looking at you like they're waiting, they're hanging on your next word? Or are they doing this number where they're folding their, I know you can't see me, but I'm folding my hands, rolling my eyes, checking my phone. Those are all elements of either disdain or non-interest. So you can kind of pay attention to, you know, reading the audience. And I will tell you this, that in presentations, when I can see that I have lost the audience for whatever reason, whether they need to go to the bathroom or everyone's checking their email right now, I take a break. I just say, okay, it looks like it's time for a 10-minute break. And so let's disband. We'll come back in 10 minutes. And it's just a way to break up the not paying attention, and everybody kind of focuses and comes back attention after the break. So don't be afraid to use breaks when you lose the audience. So, and I've got a whole bunch more on body language. So Conchita, if you need some help with, body language stuff, I've got a ton of content on that about eye movement, gesturing, ambulation, tone of voice, all that kind of stuff. So reach out if you want some more on that. I can give you some additional resources. Okay. Always heard that it's good for the speaker to find a very interested audience member at 3 points, left, right, and center, and rotate around them. Yes, absolutely, Anne. I wholeheartedly agree. It helps give the speaker energy when you can see someone in the audience who's smiling, who's writing notes, who responds facially, you know, with their face back to you. And when you can look at those people, it can actually give you energy. So great tips, Anne. Okay, great. Well, I don't want to take up more than the hour, but feel free to reach out to me if you need anything else, and know that I'm pulling for you through this really hard and challenging time. I hope that this can be a time that your business can get back on its feet and survive and thrive again. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Alysia. And I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. Again, this presentation will be available next week on our website in the full video. If you want to take a look at the slides, you can go onto opportunitystrategies.com/gtown. We have one more presentation tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. And then we are having a virtual happy hour at 5 o'clock tomorrow. So we hope that you can join us again, and we welcome any feedback for future workshops, especially if we're going to be doing any more virtual. And we hope that you enjoyed this and got a lot of good information. So we look forward to connecting with you again. Thank you.